chose this one. This is episode 326, Monster in the Closet from 1986. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too. And this episode is brought to you by Xylo, the online xylophone. A simple, online, vibrant digital xylophone, which actually sounds like a real xylophone. Shout out to playxylo.com.
Well, shout out to you, Xylo, and happy Halloween. I can't believe, so I watched this movie this morning before we introduce our guest.
Oh, same.
I watched this movie this morning, and I was like, this xylophone song is going to be stuck in my head forever, and it's already left my head. I don't know how it
is not, Halloween 3 Secret of the Witch catchy. It is definitely not.
But they play it dozens of times in this.
Millions of times.
So I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to remember it. I'm definitely going to hum it on the episode. Already forgot it, which is a little sad, but, whatever. Anyway, joining us today to talk about this movie, and there's a very specific reason, and I don't remember if I told this story on here or not, but I'm going to tell it in this episode.
Okay.
Returning guest, returning champion, Christian Larson. Hello, Larson.
Hi, it's a pleasure and an honor to be back with you guys. It's been quite a while. So.
It's been
welcome
too
back.
long.
Welcome back. Happy Halloween. You have a pumpkin behind you, which is very seasonally appropriate.
Oh,
I do. That was actually accidental. So,
before we get into the backstory and everything of this movie and why we're doing it for this show, I mean, it's obvious if you look into it. But Joe, have I explained my history with Troma and Troma Team and Troma Films and stuff like that, or no?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I would like to hear it again.
So I don't think this is crazy exaggerated to say that if it were not for Troma, we might not be here right now.
Okay,
and Larson,
insane.
I think I told you the story. I don't know if you know this. So it was my sophomore year at college, and we were in the common area in my dorm. And we turn on the TV. We're like playing a board game or something. Me and our friend Steve Payson and a couple other friends, whatever. Friend of the show, Melissa Lina, might have been there. And we're like turning through channels, and this movie comes on, and we're like, what the fuck is this movie? And we're watching this movie. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And then our friend Alan, who is involved in the campus TV station, is like, oh, this is RCTV. It's the campus TV station. I don't know what movie this is, but they put it on. And so we eventually find out this movie called Rabid Grannies, which is a Troma film. And I was like, I don't know who is subjecting Ramapo College to this movie, but whoever it is, I want to be friends with them. And so Alan is like, well, this is the campus TV station, just come with me next time. So I go there. The club at that time is run by Larson, and through him, and indirectly through Troma, I met and became friends with a lot of different people, including Mike Manzi,
resident historian Mike Manzi.
If it weren't for him, we never would have done Cage Club.
Yep.
And if it weren't for Cage Club, none of this would have been here at all. So like, I sort of say it as a joke, but I am very serious that Troma is the reason that I am friends with most of the people that I'm friends with, and honestly kind of the reason this network exists. And it's very special because a lot of the hosts on this network are in New Jersey, the New Jersey area, and Troma's a New Jersey studio, and so it's very important, very appropriate. And so, Larson, thank you for putting on Rabid Grannies, and that's why we're all here today.
Well, that wasn't me specifically. That was Gennaro Desposito, who was my kind of second in command, who was a huge Troma head who really got me into Troma. I will say I'm not particularly a huge Troma person. I think for my taste, sometimes they try a little too hard to be edgy. And which surprised me at how relatively wholesome this movie was, but we'll get into it. But Troma, I have to respect the fact that they are true independents in a world that is increasingly corporate. And I think that was kind of the spirit of the old RCTV as well, was that we were like the ragtag bunch. So the spirit is definitely there.
I also don't want to overstate my Troma fandom. I've seen maybe 4 Troma movies ever. It's just the one that I saw got me here. It's not like I'm like, I need to see all these movies. I'm just like, whoever is doing this, I want to be friends with them, because if they like this, they're going to like other things that I like or whatever.
Exactly.
But I've seen part of Rabbit Granny, or maybe it was Tromeo and Juliet, and we watched Rabbit Grannies on Trashy Tuesday, but it's like, I've seen very few of their movies, but, also Toxic Avenger remake coming out this fall with Peter Dinklage as Toxie, which is very exciting.
And Tromeo and Juliet was one of the first films by James Gunn, who, obviously
insane.
went on to do much bigger things.
Yeah, so like Joe, like Lloyd Kaufman is kind of like in ways like the modern day Roger Corman, who I know that Brian talks about a lot on High School Slumber Party. Like Mike has filled him in on that, but it's basically they give like horror in general, but these studios in particular like give young filmmakers a shot to do a thing. And like even though Bob Dolan on this movie never really made other movies, like he was mostly an assistant director and a lot of like he wrote and directed this, but he's just mostly like second unit on a bunch of stuff. Like a lot of people went on to have like really great long lasting careers because they actually got to like sort of, learn on the job and make a movie and, do that kind of thing, which is
That's
exciting.
awesome. Very respectable. I think we need more businesses like that. That's really cool.
So Monster in the Closet, which is available with ads on Freevee and Plex and Tubi, so you can basically watch it just about wherever, came out in 1986, but was shot in 1983, which, all right, took a couple years to get out.
They had to edit all of it.
Had either of you ever heard of this movie before we started this episode? Joe, had you heard of Troma?
I have heard of Troma through you talking about it. Your story, I don't think I've heard that specific story before, so that was kind of interesting.
Cool.
But no, as for Monsters in the Closet, I was absolutely never ever heard of this movie before. Never.
Well,
nothing.
Larson left the video screen and came back with, is that Monster in the Closet on VHS?
Yes.
Beautiful.
As soon as I knew we were going to be discussing it, I had to add it to the collection because it sounded so. The combination of elements is so intriguing, and there's some really interesting stuff that's probably exclusive to the VHS release, which
Ooh.
Is there?
I'll get into. Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt, so.
No, I'm super excited. I want to hear all about that in like, because believe it or not, there's not a ton of backstory about this movie. So I can go through it pretty
shit.
quickly.
Actually, there is, but maybe I've just been exhaustive in my research, but
Maybe.
I'll
Okay,
drop.
so here's
drop
what
some
I have, and I would love to have you augment in however. So, Monster in the Closet, Paul Dooley. So this is the description on IMDb, which is just like, this is not what it's about, but sure. Paul Dooley, Paul Walker, John Carradine, and Henry Gibson head up an all-star cast in this horror comedy about a murderous but misunderstood monster. So written and directed by Bob Dolan. It was produced by 5 different guys without wiki pages. It was shot by a guy, Ron McLeish, who doesn't have a wiki page. No idea of the budget. It went straight to video, so there was no box office. No reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. No reviews on Metacritic. No crazy credits, unfortunately. It is the film debut. The reason we're talking about it on this show, on this date, on Halloween, it's the film debut of Mr. Paul Walker as the Professor, who I love. We'll talk a lot about him. Also, and Larson, you might know this from your research, there's another film debut in this film. Joe, did you recognize the young girl in the first 5 minutes who gets killed?
Oh no, but she seemed vaguely familiar. But I was looking for Paul Walker. Who is it?
I'll give you a hint. Her next gig was Kids Incorporated on the Disney Channel, and she's
also not an act. She's not really an actor. She's more of a musician.
Oh no, I don't know who it is. Somebody enlighten me.
That is someone named Stacy Ferguson, or who you might know better as Fergie.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Uh-huh.
The Duchess herself.
When she pops up and she dies, I'm like, look, we're going to do this either way, but like, I hope that Paul Walker's not only in one scene. And no, Paul Walker's in most of the movie.
Most of the movie. I was hoping that too, yeah.
He's really good. We're going to talk about the Professor,
great.
but I was so glad that like it wasn't just like we're doing a Paul Walker movie and he dies, 3 seconds into the Monster in the Closet or whatever. I will also say this is one of the worst bits of trivia that I've ever seen. I'm reading verbatim from IMDb. It has 5 upvotes and 16 downvotes, which, given how like not popular this movie is, 16 downvotes is a lot.
Yes.
Verbatim from IMDb, Paul Walker's death is well known, but his mother from this movie is also dead. She died in March 2019.
That's a crazy credit if I've ever heard one.
Like, that's the kind of thing where at a certain point, like every movie from 1930, like trivia can be like,
They're
all
dead.
these actors are dead.
Yeah,
They're
I
all
know.
150 years old. It's just like, okay. Like, it's just like, yeah, you don't need to let us know that Paul Walker is dead. We know. And also, like, his mom is, I mean, she's not like, but she would have been like 70. It's like she probably.
Yeah, she's probably dead. That's what I would have thought. Like, if you were like, is that lady alive? I'd be more surprised if you came on and be like, she's still alive as of March 29th.
Everyone in this movie is still alive except for Paul. Even the monster in the closet is still alive. No, but just like, and people are just like, no, that's not trivia. Get out of here. Thumbs down.
Good on them. I'm glad they finally voted the right way. There we go.
But that's all the research I have. So, Larson, what did you find? Please hit us with whatever
I want to know. I want to know the
that.
special features you have on this VHS that you were hinting about. Please.
Well, I'll kind of fold that into my little presentation here. But so this movie is a parody of like 50s schlocky black and white monster movies, and as such, it has a bunch of actors from that kind of era of Hollywood. The sheriff is played by a guy named Claude Akins, who did a lot of classic westerns. Howard Duff, who plays the priest, was he's very big in the golden age of Hollywood, but he was also married to Ida Lupino, who was this kind of groundbreaking female film noir director of the time.
Okay.
The blind man who violently searches for his dog by swinging his cane around.
That's John Carradine, right?
John Carradine, who is the patriarch of the Carradine family.
Yeah.
And he's also been discussed on multiple episodes of The Monsters That Made Us, because he was in a couple of those really old classic horror movies.
Sure, yeah. Henry Gibson, who plays the old professor, is a guy who pops up a lot playing the weird old guy in things. He started on Laugh-In, but most notably he was the head of the Illinois Nazis in the Blues Brothers.
And we covered, he plays, he's credited as head Nazi. Wonderful credit.
And and he was in The Burbs. He was the father of the family, the creepy family next door in The Burbs. Stella Stevens, the middle-aged woman who gets the nudity in the shower scene, which is like...
I did not expect nudity, by the way. This did not, right? I mean, like, I get it in the sense of, like, when we watch scary movies that are, like, kind of like this, like, I'm always like, okay, who gets, like, who pulls the boobs out? And then I was watching this, and I was like, this seems like kind of like a kid's Saturday afternoon kind of movie. And then all of a sudden, I was like, nope, there's still boobs in this, too. Okay.
This woman is very close to Mike and my heart for a reason I'm sure Larson was about to bring up.
Because you see her boobs in Monsters in the Closet?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'd actually never heard of her, but I mean, getting back to Joe's point, like, Troma is known for, like I said before, its gratuitousness. Gore, boobs, wherever they can cram it in, they will. And that's why this movie was such kind of a shock for me until you see Stella Stevens, who was kind of a bombshell starlet of the golden age of Hollywood again.
Yeah, Joe, if you want to watch like Class of Nukem High or something, like there's movies that are like just it's super gross and super violent and super like naked and like it just
everything. Okay.
Everything. But Stella Stevens is the female lead, Elvis's love interest in Girls, 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 which is one of the more fun, wacky.
Oh yeah, you like that one.
Career, Mike and I call it. Boats,
so wait,
boats,
so she had her career, comes back to do this Troma film, and then also takes her shirt off. Awesome for her.
So here's the thing. Okay, so this is a common trope on Viva Pod Vegas, the Elvis podcast that Mike and I do. But like, almost all of the women in those movies are cast because they were former beauty models or former Playboy playmates. It's just like, who is the most beautiful woman in the world right now? Let's get her in a movie with Elvis. It doesn't matter if they are an actor or not, there's going to be a beautiful on screen. And so it makes sense for her to like have a career. She's not like known for a lot of different movies, but she has a career. And then, she's also in the Poseidon Adventure. She's in the Nutty Professor. Like she's in some pretty big movies. And then, she just winds up here and, shows a little bit of boobs in her shower here.
Yeah.
Yeah. The actor playing opposite her in that shower scene is Paul Dooley, who probably he does a lot of stuff with Christopher Guest, but probably his biggest role is the dad in Pretty in Pink. But he was a guy who was doing improv like back in the 50s and 60s, like before improv was a thing. So
that's crazy.
Kind of a big deal. The guy who plays the monster is a guy named Kevin Peter Hall. And he also played Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. He played the Predator in the Predator movies. And so he was a big dude in more ways than one. But tragically, he died at an early age from AIDS, which he caught from a blood transfusion.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. The guy who plays the guy who plays the general is a guy named Donald Moffat, who was the head of the Arctic research team in The Thing. He was also in Popeye, the Robin Williams movie. I saw a screening of The Thing in Tarrytown, which is near where I live in the Hudson Valley, and his daughter came and presented the film committee with a jacket he wore in The Thing because he loved the jacket and he didn't want to give it back to wardrobe. So he wore it all the way home, like on the plane, hoping that no one would like call him on it, and they never did. So
I've always had this jacket.
Yeah. He's great in it. I love the general. Frank Ashmore, who plays Scoop, the douchey rival reporter, he was probably the biggest role that you might know him from is he was the navigator in Airplane, the guy in the cockpit that was not Captain Over or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
He's the what's the vector, Victor?
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that I could definitely recognize him now. Yep.
That's pretty much all I got. The main guy, Richard Clark, Donald Grant, who plays Richard Clark, who I think did a great job. I think everybody did a really good job in this movie. Like,
way better than I was expecting, brother. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like I was not ready for this level of act. Like they're actually really good, especially Paul Walker. But yes.
Yeah, the level, like when you watch something like The Toxic Avenger or Class of Nukem High, you know what you're getting into. It's not quality. And it was clear. I was very impressed by certain things about this, and I was very let down by certain things about this. But I was very impressed at the cast they were able to get, the quality of the performances they were able to get, and the filmmaking in a lot of places. Just to wrap things up, I'll tell you about the special features at the beginning of the VHS tape. So there is a Troma video zine at the beginning because back in the 80s there weren't a lot of ways for a studio like Troma to sort of promote their stuff or talk about what they were doing. So they would stick these little promos at the beginning of their VHS releases, and this one had a couple of trailers. There was an action movie called Busty Babe for the CIA or something like that. It was about like a femme-fatale. It was like, you've seen James Bond, now check out, Busty McGee for the FBI. And the other one was Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, which was sort of their attempt at launching another Toxic Avenger. It was like a bumbling cop who becomes this Japanese traditional warrior. And then they cut to the Troma Studios, and it was Lloyd Kaufman, who's the head honcho, and his partner, Michael Hertz. And they gave like a little 5-minute spiel about Monster in the Closet, and they said, like, there are two kinds of movies that Troma makes. There are the ones that like Lloyd Kaufman writes and are made in-house, and then there are the ones they find and they just distribute. and this was one of them, and they found the script floating around and they liked it, and the filmmakers were running out of money, so they just like kicked them enough money to finish it. They allowed them, they were shooting in California, and so they allowed them to finish filming in Jersey City.
Okay.
And it was really cool. And the one thing that fascinated me was that they said the reason they were filming out there in California was because either the director or the director of photography was a protege of Robert Altman, who is this legendary director, and some of the cast members, Henry Gibson and Donald Moffat, have appeared in Robert Altman movies. So it makes me wonder if Robert Altman kind of gave his blessing to Monster in the Closet.
There's the movie Thrashin' with Josh Brolin, which I think is a skateboarding movie that.
Oh yes.
I've brought up a couple times because there's like 3 or 4 actresses who go on to have somewhere between small and big roles in Twin Peaks, and I'm like, I can see a version of like 1980s David Lynch watching Thrashin' and being like, "This is a good movie. I want to cast these people." So like, there's something fun about having a director who is like known for being one of the best to ever do it, like watching kind of absolute shit and being like, you know what, this is pretty good.
But yeah, so that was a big info dump. But
no, I appreciate.
No,
it.
I greatly appreciate it. Yeah.
Go into the cast like that, so I appreciate that. But there's 2 things that you mentioned that I really want to talk about. I want to get Joe's take on it. Number one, I think it is both easy and difficult to do a movie like this because like you have to sort of thread the line between like kind of making a Troma movie but also making like a kids movie, sort of, because it's not really adult other than like the shower scene, which you could pretty easily cut out or just like crop and edit whatever. But I also, you mentioned Scoop as the rival reporter. One of my favorite things about this movie is just every single character had the most obvious on-the-nose name of all time.
I was going to say that when he said his name was Scoop. Yeah, I know.
And
I
was
agree.
like, this is like the editor-in-chief of the paper. His last name is Bernstein, like the Watergate guy. The sort of dorky reporter that like has a she's all that moment when he takes his glasses get knocked off. His name is Clark, and then he basically becomes Superman.
He's Clark Kent. I just called him Clark Kent from the beginning of the movie. Yes.
Yeah. The reporter's name's Scoop. Like all these different people are just like, what is not like the most like not like Righty the reporter. It's just like, well, what's like the most common journalist name? Oh, Bernstein. Okay, cool, got it. Like that's just what we're gonna do here. So it like. But I love that about it. So, Joe, I was wondering, I mean, I think you just said you loved it, but, like, thoughts on both, like, the overall tone of this and also just the, like, kind of lazy but also spot-on naming?
What I really enjoy, like, I did like the naming a lot. What I really enjoyed is how much on-screen text there was, and yet how confusing the plot gets at certain points. They like to tell you exactly where you are to the millisecond at some points of the movie.
Although sometimes it's also like April 7th or 8th.
Yeah, there's that. There's like, this is the building next door, and you're like, okay, cool. Thanks for, we saw the camera pan over. We talk a lot about like show, don't tell. This explicitly tells over and over and over again until like something probably needs explanation, and then they don't explain that.
Although, in the movie's defense, the opening voiceover does say this movie is unexplainable. So when you get confused, it's like, hey, the movie told you it's unexplainable. You're not going to understand what's going on here.
I should have just fucking listened in the beginning. I agree.
So, Larson, I know that you own the VHS now. Had you heard of this movie before I asked you to be on this? And was that VHS expensive, or are there like a million out there?
No, the VHS tape was not. There are certain, in the VHS collecting community, there are people who are like, oh, this is the first edition of Halloween released on beta 1982.
Yeah.
Like, it gets pretty hardcore, and people buy tapes for hundreds of dollars. I think this was $3.99.
Okay, so because we just did, what did we do? Oh, Megaforce, which will be out or is out.
Oh, I love Megaforce.
It's going to be. That's the next bonus episode for patrons. So as you're hearing this, patrons, it's going to be out on Monday. But Joe looked up, and there's the Atari game that's also like $3, right? So like I'm glad that like all these things that we're talking about, you can just get for almost.
Yeah, I was like, because you could have told me the Megaforce Atari game was like $600 or $3. It just happened to be $3. Yeah, so that's what we're thinking on the VHS
it's
pricing.
Nice. No.
Good.
But I had no idea what Monster in the Closet was All I knew about it was that it was a Troma movie and that it was the debut of Paul Walker.
Yep.
And there was so much about it that really piqued my interest. The fact that it was a parody of 50s monster movies, the fact that all these random quasi-famous people were in it, the fact that it was a Troma movie. I was like, okay, this is going to be really a hidden gem. And my biggest issue with it ended up being the tone of it. Because in my mind, it was going to be like an Airplane style spoof. You know, maybe a little raunchy at times, but running gags, making fun of tropes of monster movies, that sort of thing. And it does a little of that, but the interactions between the characters are like too good, too like genuine. I don't know what it is, but it's not. It doesn't go along with that kind of gag a minute thing. And also the second half of it drags down with these endless xylophone bits, which I'm sure we'll get into.
There's a sequence in this movie where they're hunting for the monster, and it's like probably this movie is like 90 minutes, but it's probably like 4 or 5 full minutes where it's like supposed to be tense, and it's like they're hunting and they're tapping the xylophone and they're like creeping through like a warehouse or something.
Well, because he figures out not the professor, but the like.
There's 3 professors.
Yeah, the Einstein-looking one figures out that if you play the one, like, 5 notes on the xylophone, you could kind of talk to the monster.
Right.
So he's chasing him around, trying to call him out.
And, like, in a movie that's, like, really well done with a really good budget, you're like, oh my god, this is so tense. But here, just like, oh no, they ran out of money, they need to fill time. It's just like they're, like, wandering through, like, tapping on the xylophone. I think the issue, I don't know if it's an issue, but, like, the thing with the tone is just, like, I think it's just a kid's movie. Like it's not really like the nudity doesn't make any sense, but I think like people are good to each other because I think it's just meant for kids, right? It's just like, wouldn't it be really cool if like a guy who had a crush on your mom bought you candy? Well, this also sounds creepy the way I'm saying it, but like if a guy who had a crush on your mom bought you candy bars and you solved crimes with him, and just like, yeah, that's kind of pretty cool.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that like. It's not focused enough on Paul Walker to fully make that happen. You know what I mean? Like, he is still, like, a secondary character. If this was just fully Paul Walker's movie, and it's just him solving monster crimes with his new stepdad that's Clark Kent, then it would have been 100% a Disney movie. Like, it's so close. You're right.
I will say, when I was looking for this movie, because I saw that, you know, Halloween was on a Tuesday, I'm like, we need to release a Halloween movie. Like, this wasn't originally on the schedule. I was just like, Halloween's a Tuesday, we got to do this. And I remember looking, and there's another movie that's released a year later called Program to Kill. But based on the trailer and everything, like, I didn't think he was in it as much. And this one also looked better and more fun. And I think it was probably the right call. But, like, it would have been cool for Paul Walker to be in it more. But considering this is his film debut and he's, like, 11 or 12, like, he's
agree.
in so much of the movie. Like,
way more than I expected.
He's not like the star, but I'm just like, oh, he's going to keep popping up. And he's got, like, lines and he's got things to do and he's, like, inventing stuff. There's a line where his mom says that he's won 2 Nobel Prizes already. It's like, what? Okay, sure. The professor.
Yeah, there are a couple of moments where there are these kind of Airplane-esque gags that I thought were going to be more of a thing. One of them was the constant over-explaining on-screen text, like 8:45 a.m., you know? And I think that might have been a reference to, like, horror movies, because, like, old slasher movies will show that, like Haddonfield, Illinois.
Absolutely.
It gives it more of like a documentary feel, which makes it seem creepier. So I think that's what they were going for with that. The xylophone thing, I'm pretty sure was like a Close Encounters of the Third Kind thing, where they speak to the aliens with a sequence of notes. But the one gag that I thought was going to be a funny thing was the sheriff was constantly spitting. And when the reporter first meets the sheriff, he's spitting like every 2 sentences into a spittoon. And then they go to like a crime scene and he's spitting in like random things around the room. And I was like, That could have been a funny gag where, like, as the movie goes on, he's spitting into, like, more and more weird things. And that's what I expected. That's the kind of stuff I expected. But instead...
There was one good joke with that where they're at a crime scene, right, and he, like, just, like, spits in, like, what seems like a girl's, like, cup on her desk or something, which is kind of funny, but, like, they do ultimately sort of just drop that. One thing I did appreciate about this movie, and I think that, like, it's, you know, still a low-budget movie, it could kind of go either way, is that you see the monster 27 minutes in, and then you see a lot of the monster. It's not like they ran out of money or they didn't have a cool costume. It's just like, no, we're going to show you the monster for most of the movie. It's like, okay, cool, I respect that.
I have that exact same note. Like, I thought that we were going to get a long burn, you see the monster at the end type situation, but nope, 27 minutes. I was like, this movie's not very long, and they bring the monster out in the first third, and he stays.
And, like, a little bit later, you get the reveal that, like, it's kind of got, like, a xenomorph, like, mouth or little head inside of its own mouth. And, like, there's a little bit of that, like, from Alien. But other than that, it's just kind of like this, like, gloopy poop-looking thing with the...
It looked like a villain from Power Rangers to me, which also lent to the children's programming situation. But it definitely looked like something that the Power Rangers would have fought at some point.
Yes, absolutely. When it first started and the people start dying... They just walk into a closet and then clothes start flying out and you hear screaming.
Yeah, clothes just get thrown by some guy that's sitting in that closet chucking shirts out of it.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's such a perfect thing for a low-budget movie because they can't afford to show the monsters. So it's probably going to be like Jaws where you don't see the monster for like 90% of the movie because they don't have the money for it or it's not working or whatever. But you see the monster like halfway through, maybe even sooner. And it's really impressive.
There was a point, like, the same thing you have where I was just like, are they just going to have, like, an arm? Because you see the arm extend, and there's the shot. Like, there's a scene where the professor is working on stuff in the lab, basically, and, like, the arm comes from off-screen and yanks him. And I'm like, they could do a lot with just an arm. But I'm glad they have the whole monster, because, like, there's a scene where, like, him and, like, the monster and Scoop are, like, fighting over Paul Walker, and they're, like, they're basically, like, you know, pulling them in opposite directions. Like, this is, like, very funny visual gags, especially because it's Paul Walker.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like that they did use we say, like, see the monster, but you see, like, head to toe. Like, they have full body shots, like, side, everything. And so I think that is the best play that they could have made, having the monster, as opposed to, you're right, like, I think they could have gotten away with, like, just the arm, a couple shots of the face, whatever, but no, they sold it the whole time, so good on them.
I did think there's a sort of a fast connection here. There's the moment where the wacky teacher, like the mom's boss, like the sort of the wacky old professor, walks across the basketball court to the monster. Like, there's like the score, like, you know, it's like triumphant. It's like the guy is, you know, he saw this, gonna be friends with the monster, and the monster kills him anyway.
He says my favorite line. He says, "Listen." He said, "Listen, I'm your friend. I'm a scientist." So.
The monster attacks and the military opens fire, and then there's like we communicated. He says, "Could you understand what it said?" And he goes, "No." I'm like, well, that's not really communicating. But that guy dies, and they go to the graveyard. You see the funeral, and I'm just like,
well, no, they like saved. Well, okay, yeah, the having 5 professors. Yeah, no, having 5 different having 2 people that are real professors and a kid that they call the professor makes this movie very, very interesting in a lot of ways. But, like, yeah, because, like, after that, we're like, we like see him, but he's alive, like, when the monster, like, leaves or whatever. Then we go to the graveyard, so I was like, okay, cool. We went to the graveyard. So he's dead. And then, like, right after that, the mom is sitting there, and she's like, thanks for saving the professor to Clark Kent. And I'm like, which fucking like, is he still alive? Or, like, we just saw his funeral. But, yeah.
I think she's talking about Paul Walker, right? Because
she is. She 100% is.
Okay. Oh, but you're saying because everyone's called a professor. Yeah.
Everyone's a professor or called the professor, so it's just like, good choices, guys. Excellent.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about how in Furious 7, like 30 years later, Paul Walker is going to be in a similar graveyard, and they're going to say, no more funerals, Brian. But, like, just like, no more funerals, the professor. But, you know, I don't know.
They walk around as, like a coterie for, like, a while. As
good word.
It looked to me like this is like the beginning of like a really weird joke because it's like a priest, Einstein, a sexy teacher, Paul Walker as a child, and Clark Kent are all at dinner together, and you're like, where the fuck is this going? And that's exactly what happens. And I do. As much as, like, so we watch a lot of these scary movies, and, like, often it's like, you know, those two go this way, those two go this way. No, in this movie, they keep all 5 of them together for as long as they can, just walking in a line, like, everybody peeking through the door at the same time. And it really cracked me up. I was like, I've never seen a group that just, like, stays a group on their march.
I
wrote
down, I'm like, this dinner is a wild group. The professor, his mom, her wacky boss, the reporter, and a priest. It's just like, there's all right, but here's it's basically like, here's everyone you need to follow for the rest of the movie.
But it sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? You're like a priest, a nutty professor, Paul Walker at 10, and everybody sits down at a bar. And you're like, okay.
Well, I have in my notes too much creeping. And as much as I think those creeping scenes really grind everything to a halt, I love the image, like Joe was saying, of like all 6 of them huddled around, creeping forward, like, and in the background, the Clark Kent guy's eating a Nestle Crunch bar because he's constantly eating chocolate, you know, and Henry Gibson has the xylophone like perfectly framed. Like,
yes.
Those kind of shots, even though there's like 20 minutes of them in the movie, and that xylophone music made me want to fucking claw my ears out. The way it was framed and the way that and a lot of other things were shot in the movie, like were very impressive and made me think that this guy probably had some bigger filmmaking chops. In particular, I'm thinking of there's a scene where we're introduced to the reporters and a camera sort of dollies through the newsroom along the desks.
Yes, I remember.
And I'm like, I was not expecting a shot like that. And I was also thinking of Joey because Joey, like myself, loves portrayals of old school newsrooms and journalism. And I was watching this with my wife, and after that first scene in the newsroom, she was like, is this what the news was like? And I was like, it hasn't really been like this for quite some time. But
I will say, this is a teaser for you and for the listeners, the other patrons, that the Megaforce episode, we spend like 5 minutes talking about like that exact thing about like newsrooms and old-timey technology and stuff. So like, you know, it's not exactly the same kind of portrayal, but when I found out this movie is about journalism, kind of, I was just like, hell yeah, that rules.
Yeah.
Did either of you have a favorite on-screen text? Is there one that stands out in your head?
No, I didn't write anything down because I'm just like, these are all good. Like,
okay.
Did you have one in particular that you liked?
I was debating between the shower, like when they cut to the shower and just label it the shower. That one was top tier for me. The building next door was good, all the timings. But yeah, the shower, I think, wins. Did you have a favorite one?
I can't really think of them off the top of my head. I did make a short list of like moments that I really liked. And one of them, it kind of goes back to the shot of the whole crowd creeping forward. There is a scene where they convince the general. So like this general comes to town and is like, we're going to blow this monster off the face of the earth. And he's really good at playing that kind of character. And they all convince him to give them a ride somewhere. And they're all in a Jeep. And it's like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon. Like the entire crowd is in this Jeep, and they're just like, whoa,
and he's swerving.
Whoa, yeah. Yep. And it's really a fun little scene.
We also didn't talk about that, like when he does. So Einstein goes up and talks to the monster, and then like the monster attacks him, and so they're like, okay. Now we're just going to throw a bunch of bombs right next to this guy. And and like ostensibly like the sheriff guy kills it's not like the monster really killed the professor because like when they get there he's still breathing and talking, but it was just like, oh no, he was just like in the midst of a war that broke out around him. Interesting.
That was pretty cool that they were able to get like actual tanks and stuff and like rocket launchers. I wouldn't have expected that, but
I need you guys to explain to me, if you can explain, sort of how they're using energy, because they think they're going to kill the monster with energy, right? So the professor, Paul Walker, makes like a camera, but he's like, you have to use the horn too. So there's like those little horn that the guy has to blow. I think Clark blows that as he's zapping the monster.
He said it at the beginning. He said that he uses sound. If you repeat a sound, he can amplify it to make energy from the sound. That's like what he teaches Clark, like when he first shows him the thing after the dinner.
Okay, so but that's what they think is going to kill the monster, but in reality, what they have to do
yes.
is you don't destroy the monster's energy. Instead, you just have to destroy all closets. And so they put out
on the face of the earth, every closet on the face of the earth.
And they put out like an APB, or like, we must act immediately, destroy all closets, and we get like a couple montages of like
these montages are probably my favorite part of the movie.
Closets being set on fire, like a samurai, like a ninja taking katana to slice through a closet, and it's just like
the woman that's sitting there that has like a blowtorch and a welder's mask on, lighting her own walk-in closet on fire was so incredible to me. I'll never forget that.
We see the monster like roaming the streets, carrying Clark in his arms, sort of like King Kong or like the Incredible Hulk or something, where he's just like looking for his home, and he's going to like closets, and he just like looks at the closet and it's destroyed. He can't go in there. And then eventually he just dies. Like, he collapses.
Well, he's hungry. He doesn't get to eat. They starved him out.
It's just so funny that they're like, well, his real power source is closets. It's like, wait, what? Hold on, what?
Yeah.
I agree. I explained this movie to my friends today, saying that, like, yeah, so they just decided to destroy all the closets in the world. And everybody was like, what the fuck are you watching?
The one thing that got me is that a closet is technically an absence of space. It's not.
I was going to ask. Okay, you're leading us in, Larson, perfectly, because we've been talking all about what is a vehicle. Is not every room a closet? Why can't he just like anything with a? And also, they burn the closets down instead of just removing the doors.
Yes,
which is an interesting choice too.
No, but I just love that this is like in a movie filled with kind of kid logic. Like, this is the ultimate kid logic. It's like, you can't just take away the closets. It's like, well, that's not really a thing, but like, all right.
You can't have a monster under your bed if your mattress is on the floor, Joey.
Right.
That's how this works.
And I also, it's pretty incredible that like the assistant professor at a community college can get on TV and tell the entire world to destroy their closets, and everyone's like, you know what? Why not? We'll give it a shot.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing where like at the end of, we talked about it at the very beginning of this episode, Halloween 3, where they're like, he's calling TV stations like, turn it off, but he gets through to 1 of 3 locally, right? So it just like, so he saves like a third of like an area's kids, but like all the other kids everywhere else are doomed, right? So it's like, this is what if that worked? It's just like, well, he just got the word out, kill all closets, destroy all closets, and, save the day.
There has to be some good merch for this movie. Like, this movie would be prime for like destroy all closets T-shirts, right? Like, somebody had to do it. I never.
I wouldn't think there's much of a market for it because
I agree. Nobody saw this movie
outside of the three of us. I don't know.
Well, no, I am glad though that like this movie is out there to watch with ads, right? Because it's like, what movie did we just watch?
Megaforce, I think. We talk about this all the time. It was
Megaforce, yes. It was just like, this is a movie that should be out there that, like, don't make people pay for it. Like, and I know that, like, the rights are a complicated thing.
Put it on Tubi,
but
put it on
put it out
Freevee.
there for people to discover. Like, this is just, like, Paul Walker. Because, like, that's, like, the point. Like, that's why you, like, Paul Dooley's in one scene. Paul Walker's in most of it. John Carradines in one scene. It's just, like, all these actors in this movie. It's like, well, they're not really, right? Like, they're in the movie, but they're not in the movie. So, but I'm glad we watched this, though, because it's goofy and silly and fun, and I enjoyed it.
You talking about the monster and the energy and the professor's machine that he built with the sound. I was hoping that this movie was going to end because it had such like a kiddie tone to it. That this movie was going to be that he just uses the monster as like a nuclear reactor to like power all the world's energy problems, and like he just channels like the monster's scream or something. And it's just like, well, we solved world energy problems. And, like, that's, like, the hooray. And they, like, lift him up and, like, carry him out. And, like, that's the end of the movie. I didn't expect it to end this way.
If you did, I would be worried for you.
Yeah, sorry. The kill all the closets thing definitely took me for a loop.
One of the more interesting things that I dug up in my research was about the ending, which is clearly like a King Kong homage. Throughout the movie, when the Clark Kent reporter takes his glasses off, the mom professor becomes transfixed with him, and there's this great like slow zoom of her face, and
I also thought we were going to get the reverse. I really thought that we were going to get her to take her glasses off and then him be like, oh my god, she's so beautiful, like the classic trope. The reverse is really great. I liked it a lot. Part of the
twist, is that like when the monster knocks, after they've tried all these devices and crazy like technological stuff, all it takes is for the professor's glasses to get knocked off and the monster falls in love with him. And it's very much like a King Kong thing. Even to the point where after the monster dies, someone says, it's beauty that killed the beast, which is the final line in King Kong. So when I was doing research before I watched this, one of the things that kept coming up, at least a little bit, one or two commenters said it was a gay allegory. The movie was called Monster in the Closet.
In the Closet.
Okay. Yeah. And it was filmed in San Francisco, and the monster falls in love with the man at the end. But I think that may have been a stretch. It would have been a really cool thing for like a gay filmmaker in the early 80s to be like, well, I can't make a gay movie, but I can make a monster movie and make it have these kind of gay undertones.
That'd be really cool, yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's what happened. I think that the thing at the end is just a King Kong gag, but it was interesting to think about.
I'm glad you re-mentioned the San Francisco thing, because as I was preparing for the Letterboxd game, I found, so like on Letterboxd, there's like, you can add movies to lists. Like I have a list on there of all the movies you covered and blah, 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 whatever. But there's also like, you can have like, it's like lists that this movie, like lists of yours this movie's on, so it's like helpful for like whatever you're like, oh, I wanted to watch this or whatever. But it's also like lists you've liked that this movie's a part of. And there was one list I liked that this was a part of, and it was films used in Guy Maddin's The Green Fog. And I was like, what the fuck? So The Green Fog is a great movie. Guy Maddin's this like sort of experimental filmmaker, and he basically remade Vertigo with other movies' clips without dialogue, and it's incredible. But I'm like, where the fuck? There's no monster in Vertigo. What would he have used? But it's probably just like some shot of San Francisco that they got for this movie. They're like, that's perfect, because Vertigo takes place in San Francisco, Northern California, whatever. But I'm like, why would they have used? So I was going to bring it up as like hey, that's kind of a fun little thing. But I'm like, oh, now I know probably why. Like there was some kind of like establishing shot, or like the outside of like the university or something, where they're just like, you know what movie did this really, really well?
Monsters in the Closet. Yeah, this reminds me, Monsters in the Closet would be perfect for this scene.
It's so weird, though.
Very strange.
But I was like, cool, okay, because, Green Fog rules. Like, it's kind of like racer trashy and like the sort of recutting and reconstituting a movie for a different purpose. But I'm like, where would this have possibly be used? But, But I think I think there's probably validity to that, Larson, where it's just like, I'm a young, either like maybe a queer filmmaker or whatever, and I'm going to make a movie that's a monster movie, because a lot of horror movies about all sorts of like, forbidden / taboo, quote unquote, taboo topics. So it's like between, because I did wonder at the end if the monster was in love with Clark, because he kind of like lovingly picks him up and like wants to bring him back, right? Like it looks like they are in love.
It absolutely is. I mean, at least it's a one-sided thing probably, but the monster definitely, in fact, the zoom on the monster's face is the same as the one in the mom, and he even tilts his head to the side a little bit. And it's clearly a romantic thing, because he won't go into the closet without Clark. That's the whole thing, is he tries to go in the one remaining closet in the world, and he can't get in because he won't let go of Clark. So,
although maybe if you want to extrapolate this further, if you destroy all closets, that means that everyone is out and there's no need for a closet to hide anymore. Maybe it's like a sort of Edenic, although at the end they're like, now that the monster's out, we can rebuild closets. Like, well, now you got to go back into hiding or something. So maybe not, I don't know.
Like I said, the theory falls apart in a lot of places, but
But I love it as an idea. It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Larson, do you have other notes about this? Because we have a couple games and stuff to do, but do you have any other notes to share about Monster in the Closet?
Well, I have one last note, and it's probably my favorite. I know you guys are big fans of crazy credits. I don't know if you sat and watched all the credits of this movie, but in the special thanks at the end, it's got like 80 names, and they're all names of individual people, at least the vast majority of them. It looks like something that was crowdfunded. When you see something on YouTube and they're like,
sure.
Thanks to my sponsors, or, thanks to the members of the Too Fast, Too Forever Patreon. It's this.
Yep.
It's a big list, and most movies don't have a list like that. So I'm thinking they were a lot of people who pitched in either money or something else to help get the movie made. It's really interesting, but some of the names on the list really stuck out to me. Jerry O'Connell.
Ooh,
okay.
I don't know if it's the Jerry O'Connell,
but it might be. Time-wise, it would make sense, kind of.
Maybe he and Paul Walker were pals because they were both child stars
actors.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jonathan Frakes, who was Riker on Star Trek The Next Generation. I don't know what he had to do with this movie. Harry Nilsson, who was a singer-songwriter from the 60s, best friends with John Lennon.
To bring it up to earlier, Harry Nilsson did the score for Popeye, for Roger Altman's Popeye, so maybe there's the Roger Altman connection here. Maybe Nilsson, maybe that's how we get there.
That's true. That's very true. And the biggest name on the list, Ringo Starr. So
What the fuck was Ringo doing out here with this movie?
I don't know what.
Man.
I mean, but a really interesting, and I'm tempted to go back and read through that list to see if there's any more names that pop out, but those were the only ones that did.
Joe, other notes, other thoughts about Monster in the Closet?
The only last thing I wanted to bring up is seeing Paul Walker be an actual child actor, like not knowing personally when his career started, makes a lot of sense why his family is adamant about reestablishing his brother as Paul Walker in Fast and the Furious. Because we definitely watched what was the movie with Zeph that was about the hotel with the child actor parents.
Oh, yeah. If you lived here, you'd be home now? No, it's... Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes, it was
Hollywood
bad.
Hotel or something, like something like this. So I'm thinking that his parents always dreamt of having a star as a child. And then they're like, well, why don't we just replace him with the other one?
If you lived here, you'd be home now. A group of people from different backgrounds lives together in a temporary housing complex in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah. So Paul Walker's born in 73, so this was shot in 83, so he was 10 in this, 13 by the time it came out. But, like, I don't think we covered, we our first lap of Pit Stops, which is like lap 4 for what, like, we did a handful of Paul Walker movies, but, like, I don't think we did anything...
Tanny and the T-Rex. And he was like maybe a teenager.
But that was like mid-90s, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Yeah, Tammy and the T-Rex is the earliest Paul Walker I'm familiar with, and I won't say his performance in that blew me away. So, I mean, seeing him in Monster in the Closet was a real step up.
So Monster in the Closet comes out in 86. Programmed to Kill, which I mentioned earlier, is 87. Then he's not in another movie till Tammy in 94, at which point he is, 2021, right? So then Meet the Deedles in 98, Pleasantville, Varsity Blues, and like he's off to the races from there. But yeah, so there's basically, he did 2 very early movies, jump into Tammy, and then another jump handful of years later, then his career begins in earnest. But yeah, this is like the debut, the onset of Paul William Walker IV. You guys want to watch a trailer for Monster in the Closet?
I am very curious to see the trailer for Monster in the Closet.
I am assuming there's no reason for it to be 2 minutes and 56 seconds long, but it is 2 minutes and 56 seconds long. Posted by the Trailers of Horror, Monster in the Closet 1987 original trailer. The description says, this old, rare original trailer for this Troma feature.
feature. This was probably a trailer that, like Larson was explaining, was probably a trailer on another Troma film before this one came out.
Very possibly.
Somebody
And
ripped it off the VHS.
Trailers before other VHS. The Passenger 57 Street Night classic, iconic in our friendship lore.
But the trailers shown at the beginning of Monster in the Closet for, bust the agent of the CIA and whatever, they were a lot longer than usual because, again, there weren't a lot of ways to market these movies. So
yeah, they're not going to get on TV with these trailers, so they have to show them somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Also, you're not constrained to theatrical, you have to be 2 minutes and 30 seconds or less, right? So, okay. Are you both ready to watch Monster in the Closet original trailer?
Whenever you are, brother.
All right. 3, 2, 1, play. And this is when I saw this, the Troma team released the Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hurst present. I'm just this feels like home.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something very comforting about that Troma team intro.
It's also fun that that takes 14 seconds to show that, right? It's just we got time. What else are we doing?
And this guy is the go-to announcer for Troma movies. He did
he's their voice.
And that's Fergie.
Insane to me.
Even the font is the old 30s, 40s monster film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We didn't mention that when she's in the shower, we have 3 different psycho jokes where it's she's gonna get stabbed by the monster or whatever, but it's no, it's always
it's
just
her husband.
Billy, and then he goes and gets killed in the closet, and then she gets killed in the closet.
So frightful that it could only dwell in one place.
A closet. Is that David Carradine's dad or brother? Dad?
Dad.
Okay. Oh, man.
There are a lot of extras in this movie.
There's a lot of actors. There's a lot of actors total. I agree.
Troma has a reputation of just being you want to be in a movie? Here's $5.
Nuclear flower pots? I missed that.
Yeah.
Now that you say that this actor who was in The Monster also played Predator, the monster kind of at certain angles looks like the Predator.
100%.
Oh, they didn't even shout out Paul Walker.
No. The cage that they make, the electrified cage to electrocute him. It's pretty cool. It doesn't work, but it was pretty cool.
I do I like that the trailer is definitely in the style of what you'd think of an old movie trailer, an old-timey horror trailer.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, this is good. This is better than the Titanic trailer, I'll tell you that much.
We watched a lot of trailers. This one's pretty good, yeah.
It's making it look very action-packed. It's conveniently leaving out all of the creeping around with the xylophone scenes.
It also conveniently includes 100% of the movie's action, right? So it's it's leaving out all the xylophone except for the one shot, and it's here's all of the action. Okay. Letterboxd game, for reference sake, Mad Max Fury Road, 1.6 million times logged. Monster in the Closet, 1986, directed by Bob Dolan, starring Donald Grant, Denise Dubarry, Henry Gibson, and Paul Walker, has been seen by how many people?
Oh, it's free on Freevee and Tubi, but I don't think that helps. Paul Walker's debut, Fergie might help, but not much. I would say 3,000 people to start.
Okay, Larson?
Oh boy. I'll say 2,500.
You guys are both right there. It's 2604. 2,604
Beautiful.
people have logged this. Average rating of a 2.7, most common a 3, then a 2, then a 2.5. Awesome Wolf Southern Past guest gave it 4 stars.
By the way,
many
that was a great
people-
first guess. Can you not cruise over? I haven't been that close lately. That one was fucking dead on, bro. Okay.
Out of
I've been
those
listening to a
2,604
lot of your
people-
podcasts, so I've been studying how the numbers work.
Yeah, you have to get in the right mental headspace.
Well, you can study all you want. I don't understand how the numbers work, but I'm glad that someone does other than Joe. Out of those 2,600 people, remember we are in spooky season, how many people have this in their top 4 favorite films of all time?
Oh, you gave us a hint. I'm gonna start with 6.
I'm going to say 10.
You are both too high.
4.
3.
You are both too high.
Oh, come on. So you faked me out with that we're starting with spooky season? Okay, 1.
2.
You are both too high.
0. Oh, man.
Nobody has this in their top 4 favorite films.
Has this ever happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
rare, but usually at least there's some. Like, this is one of the smaller movies. So anyway, I found Marcos Silva at Marcos Silva on Letterboxd, who gave this movie 5 stars. So he loves this movie.
Okay.
Didn't review it. Doesn't have in his top 4. But his top 4 are 3 classic, unequivocal Joe, a.k.a. not Jaws. 3
Okay, thank
classic
you.
horror movies, and then a Letterboxd all-star that is not a horror movie.
Has
But
to be
there's-
Alien.
Nope. There's a different horror movie from the 70s, a different horror movie from the 70s, and a different horror movie from the 90s. And then one of the most beloved films of all time that pops up almost every time we play this game.
A Star Wars movie? One of the Star Wars?
No.
Okay.
Don't guess the 4th one yet. Just guess the horror movies.
The Thing.
No.
What
But another
was it?
one by that director.
Come on, Larson. Help me out here, bud.
Oh,
What's that guy's biggest
Halloween?
movie? Halloween, number 2. Halloween, number
Awesome.
2.
Okay.
You said 70s, right?
That was one of the 70s. There's another one from the 70s and one from the 90s.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Nope.
Night of the Living Dead.
Nope. That's the 60s.
Okay.
One of these I covered on a different podcast.
Interesting. Okay. It's like somebody in Scream. No.
One of these is the start of a franchise.
Is the 90s the start of a franchise?
Nope.
Oh, the 70s is the start of a
70s.
franchise. Friday the 13th?
Nope. That is the 70s, but no.
Man.
I will say this is one of the most popular horror films of all time and also widely considered one of the best horror films of all time.
And it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nope. This director is one that we have covered on this show.
That doesn't help me at all.
There's
Yes.
another movie of his that I brought up. There's a couple movies of his that we have not yet covered that we should have covered.
Okay.
He recently he passed away this year.
Oh, okay. Who died this
Oh, The
year?
Exorcist.
I don't know.
The Exorcist, number 1. William Friedkin.
yeah.
So the other horror movie from the 90s I covered for a different podcast. Again, one of the most popular horror films of all time. Started a movement. Game changer.
And it's not Scream.
No. That also, I would say, started a movement, although
Yeah, that's
New
why
Nightmare
I
kind of
was
did it
thinking
before
Scream
that.
for
But
the-
no, it
yeah.
started a different movement. 90s horror.
Oh,
one of the most popular.
Saw.
Nope, that's 2000s. Before that, before there was Saw, there was
Hostel?
this movie.
Hostel?
Franchise. It's the start of a franchise, too. But
There are multiple Hostels. This is
Is
also
there?
maybe...
I didn't know that.
I'm thinking it's because in the 90s you had the kind of gore porn movement that Hostel and
No, that was
Saw
more
kind of
2000s.
started.
That was after... that was
Oh, okay.
Afghanistan. That was Abu Ghraib.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, there's a whole, like, Tobin taught me all about, like, that was, like, people's, like, reactions to, like, war, like, the, Guantanamo and stuff. They're like, let's just make horror movies about it. The horror franchise was The Exorcist, but this is also a horror franchise. This other one, it's less of a horror franchise, but there's at least, I think, 3 movies, including this one. 90s horror.
I Know
changed
What
the
You Did
game
Last
for
Summer?
the genre.
Blair Witch Project.
The Blair Witch Project, 1999, the podcast.
Ah, good one.
90s
good
horror
one.
changes the genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Found
And there's
footage.
more of them, even though it's not really yeah.
I think there was a sort of a shitty second one, and then
There's there's
Wingard
three.
and Simon Barrett made one like 6 years ago. The other one, not horror at all, the start of a trilogy, and a movie that comes up over and over and over again in this game because it has been logged 1.9 million times. Beloved by nerds around the world.
Joe said Star Wars before? New Hope?
I did say Star Wars before. Is it Back to the Future?
Nope.
No, because you said it's
Start of a trilogy.
Start of a Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Rings.
The Fellowship of the Ring.
Everybody loves Lord of the Rings. The Fellowship of the Rings.
The Exorcist, Halloween, Lord of the Rings, The Blair Witch Project. Shout out to Marcos Silva for doing that. And also, while we're talking about Wes and shouting people out, shout out to Cassie Wilson, Nick Burris, Alex Ellen, and Justin Kleiman, Brian Rodriguez of High School Slumber Party. Harry Nilsson, what? Wes Hampton, Jerry Robinson, Dan the Duke, Hayden, Renato DiDonato, Michael McGann, Lane Middleton, Lindsay Lewandowski, Nate Milton of the Kings of Sport, Jason Rainey, Tom Price, Mike Gallier, Josh Buckley of Whole Lotta Wolves, Michael Moser, Christian Larson, what? Tara Newone, Aaron Willows, and Natalie
guy?
Absolute, and Jessica Collins, a.k.a.
Montez.
Thank you all for supporting us at the $5 a month level or above. We do have that Patreon page at toofast2forever.com if you want to join us over there. But Larson, as a patron, as a friend, as a returning guest of this program, thank you for everything you do. And thank you for joining us tonight to talk about Monster in the Closet.
It was just an absolute pleasure talking with you guys again. And I'm so glad I got to say Montez along with you guys, which is something I always...
Yeah.
I don't even know her, but I heard her on one of your episodes. But whenever I listen to your podcast, whenever you say Montez, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, I say it along with you. So
Shout out
I love
Montez.
that. Thank you.
that was a thrill. I just want to say one thing before I go. I recently became a board member of the Peekskill Museum in Peekskill, New York, where I live, which is a very cool thing. And part of that is I get to organize events that have to do with Peekskill history. And I'm the youngest person on the board by 30 years.
I can imagine, yeah.
I'm in my 40s, but Troma filmed a lot of movies in Peekskill, New York in the 80s. Because Lloyd Kaufman was friends with George Pataki, who was at the time the mayor of Peekskill. And so there are members of the Peekskill community who have been in the background of Troma movies. And there are locations around, when they needed a school bus full of screaming children, they just went to the school and said, hey, can we film, whatever. So I'm going to try to put together a screening of a Troma movie at a theater in town and have people from the community who were extras in the movies.
Oh, that's so cool, brother.
Tell their stories, yeah. So that is
very,
cool.
very cool. Well, aside from encouraging people to go visit you in Peekskill, what do you have going on? Anything you want to plug? Anywhere people can find you on the internet?
Not really right now, kind of low-key.
All right, totally cool.
I host a weekly trivia night at a bar called Gleason's. If you're ever in the area, I highly recommend it. But yeah, I'm Captain Good Times, CAPN Good Times on Instagram. It's the best place to find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Joe, our next handful of episodes, so we've got a little bit of time before we get back to Life in the Fast Lane, because next week we got Fate of the Furious, as intended. Then after that, because this was a little bit of a bonus episode, Monster in the Closet. But then we've got The Taking of the Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, not the remake, but the original from the 70s, which has come up on 2 or 3 different episodes this lap as great examples of XYZ. So I'm very excited because I've never seen that one.
Okay.
And then for Thanksgiving week, even though this is the Planes, Trains, but No Automobiles lap, because it is a Thanksgiving movie, we are covering on that Tuesday Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because we're going to get back on the car and do that week. We've been building toward it, sort of, in a way, all lap. And then after that is Life in the Fast Lane number 20. But we got Fate, Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Life in the Fast Lane. And then for our patrons, on Monday, we've got Megaforce as a bonus episode. So we got lots of good stuff coming up, and lots of movies that I'm looking forward to seeing for the first time or again. So
Yeah, same. That's
very,
a good run.
Very cool. But for all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFastTooForever, or at TooFastTooForever on Twitter, X, whatever, Instagram, wherever. Email us, family@cageclub.me. Check out our Patreon page at TooFastTooForever.com and our store at cageclub.me/shop. And come back next time for The Fate of the Furious. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too.
And that was Troma expert, Troma superfan. His favorite movies are all Troma, Jake. But dear friend of the podcast, Christian Larson, and we will tell you all about it
when we see you again.